And tonight on the Daily Wrap, we're getting our first look at the polls since the CNBC debate. And guess who's on top? Hint, think of the movie The Outsiders. Also, who's really in control of the upcoming presidential debates? The Republican Party or the campaigns themselves? And wait till you hear how much the federal government spent to build a gas station in Afghanistan. This is the Daily Wrap, live from New York City.
8,000 times.
And welcome to the show, everybody. I'm Joe Concha. My co-host Rick Unger, south of the border on vacation. What else is new? To my right, we are joined by Newsday columnist and radio and TV commentator Ellis Hennigan will be filling in for Mr. Unger tonight.
Good to see you. How are you? Nice to be with you, man.
Way too nice, too.
He's bigger than I am, though, isn't he?
Who, Rick?
He's like he's big, right?
HGH. Those are your three letters to remember.
Thank you.
And to Mr. Hennigan's right, he is a former Navy SEAL, president of the Citizens League. Carl Higbie is back once again. And finally, he is CEO of Change Up Media, LLC. Ben Weingarten will not leave. Good to see you again, Ben.
Can't get me out of here.
You're like the mafia. Every time they try to get out, they pull you back in. Yep. I totally screwed that up. Let's get right to the Daily Download.
Major parties do not nominate people like Carson and Trump. These guys are so incompetent whenever the actual subject is running the country. They just disappear from the debates. And I just have to feel, I have no evidence for this. And I've said this for 6 months now that they're about to collapse.
Not that we're keeping track. Not that we're keeping track.
The emerald path will get to Oz, the curtain will come down, and Marco Rubio will emerge triumphant.
That was political genius David Brooks of the New York Times. Unfortunately, Mr. Brooks has gotten this election cycle completely and absolutely wrong so far to date. Like the most of us, actually. And in the first national poll released since the GOP CNBC debate, too many acronyms there, the two incompetents, Donald Trump and Ben Carson, each have 26% support. If you do the math between the two of them, that'd be a majority, or 52% for those keeping score at home. Senator Ted Cruz also seeing a big bump of 5 points to the magic double digits of 10%. Marco Rubio, who some felt won that debate last week, is at 9%. Jeb Bush only at 5%, despite all that money and organization. And Carly Fiorina, who saw a huge bump after the second GOP debate, now sitting at 4% and sinking. Okay, as far as who won the debate in the Newsmax poll, let's take a look. Whoa, Trump won. Wow, what a shock there. 50% there, wins the Newsmax debate for the third consecutive time. Ted Cruz, many felt, won that debate as well. 21%, Ben Carson 13%, Marco Rubio 11%, and then everybody else not at 0.0%, but might as well be. And in the NBC Survey Monkey poll, that's a different kind of poll that kind of tracks only Republican voters. Who won the debate? Cruz, 24%, Trump, 17%. Fiorina coming in third at 7%. Did not see that coming. Actually, not third. Sorry, the way this is structured. You see Rubio coming in second and Trump third, Carson fourth. So let's start with someone who may be on the fence about Mr. Trump, Carl Higbie. Okay.
I know it's
You're
tough.
a huge supporter.
Huge supporter. Huge supporter. That Donald will be our next president. I've been saying that since day one. Rick's been hitting me when he was started at 3%. So far, so good.
Really, Ellis,
that
you
guy-
obviously agree
I
with
was
that
going to say,
sentiment.
I'll hit you in Rick's stead. I mean, no, he will not be the next president. He may be the nominee, actually. I mean, I don't think that's impossible because, listen, this is not a year where knowing anything, having any consistent views, actually being familiar with the issues, none of that stuff matters anymore, right? You do have to feel for David Brooks, right? Smart guy, trying to analyze this under conventional bases, finding that none of the analysis makes sense. But yeah, all that stuff of like actually knowing something doesn't really matter this
The
year.
greatest thing about Barack Obama being president is he has literally left the bar on the floor. Anybody can step over that bar at this point. And to that effect, you are going to have people like Donald Trump, who came out of nowhere as far as from a political career, and now he's risen to the top because you cannot compete with conservatism and pop culture combined. That's why he'll win.
And you think he's conservative?
Yeah, I do.
All those positions he had, were they conservative?
I think where he's gotten now in
It
the
doesn't matter,
in
does
the
it?
political realm,
It
he
doesn't
is now a conservative.
I would love to ask Ben Weingarten that question.
Yeah.
In the eyes of a true conservative like yourself, is Donald Trump a true conservative?
Absolutely not a true conservative.
Thank you.
He's a populist,
Yeah.
and he knows.
What's the difference in your mind?
So the
Define
difference,
the two.
the difference in my mind is that you can be a populist and a conservative, but in the case of a Trump, when Trump is, for example, anti-free trade, you can't be anti-free trade and call yourself conservative. You have to believe in free market principles. Doesn't mean that you believe that you should have no borders whatsoever, but it does mean that you should do what's best for your economy, and free trade is essential to that. That's one issue among a litany of issues where Trump is questionable, I would say.
Fair enough. And his terms have evolved greatly over the time that he's become in the race, because this is his first time with politics. Look, that's the liberal left word that you guys use for everything. Anytime a policy changes, it's evolve.
Give Barack Obama credit. He created the evolve move, and everybody uses it now. I've evolved on gay marriage. I've evolved on immigration.
Let me suggest something slightly different.
Yes.
Maybe it isn't that he believes one thing and they believe another thing. Maybe he doesn't believe anything. I mean, there is no evidence in the history of Donald Trump, and I speak as someone who's covered him.
Maybe he's going to do what's best for the American people.
Who has covered him for almost 3 decades now. I don't think the guy believes in anything other than succeeding, and that's something. But
make
it
America
ain't
great again.
politics.
He's been, if you look back at his books and all the things that he had written in the interviews, he's been somewhat consistent on several issues. But the one thing I'd say is, and why he's doing so well, in my opinion, and why people like David Brooks could never have seen it coming, is that the anti-establishment sentiment is so strong among conservatives right now. All of us, I'm speaking personally here, and the rest of the conservatives as well, feel completely betrayed by everyone in Washington, and that includes quote-unquote so-called conservatives, and that's what he is tapping into right now.
Look at the numbers, right? I mean, Ted Cruz is a senator, I get that, but he portrays himself, he always calls it the D.C. cartel, right?
Yep.
Oh, and so if you put his numbers with Trump and Carson, 62%. Over 6 and 10, like the 3 guys that say, I am not part of that scene whatsoever.
If you're a Republican politician and you've spent the last 25 years telling your voters they can't trust Washington, don't be surprised if at some point those people don't want to support Republican politicians.
As a Democrat, who would you like to face the most? Who would give your candidate, who I imagine is Hillary Clinton, the best chance to win?
As a Democrat, I have a rare boost of confidence this year.
You do?
I say, bring them on.
Bring him on.
Bring them on.
No candidate scares you.
Take your pick.
Marco Rubio does not scare you, for instance.
Take your pick. It's not a Republican year.
It's not a Republican year.
Well, what happens though when Hillary Clinton's in a debate and she gets flustered and angry? Because I think a lot of the people on the Republican side are articulate and they'll know how to push her buttons. That won't be a good look for her, and that'll stick with the American people.
She has plenty of weaknesses as a candidate. I mean, first of all, she lacks charm, which her husband has.
That's an understatement.
No, it's true. It's true. She's not the perfect candidate, but she's got advantages that are going to elect her.
I will say, and soak this up, you'll never hear me say this again, but I thought she did very well at those hearings as far as composure.
Yeah, I'm good in the debate too, right? Pretty well.
Well. Here's the thing about that debate. It was against 3 sea turtles and a socialist. All right. Any one of us would have looked good against that competition.
I don't know.
2 have dropped out since.
They definitely had fewer candidites. I'll give you that.
They had fewer, yet now they only have 3 for the next debate that's coming up, I believe, on November 4th.
And that Lessig guy left today, I noticed.
Oh, did Lessig do it as well?
Yes, he said he couldn't do it.
Wow, it wasn't trending for some reason. Go figure. Go ahead.
But we'll see under the pressure of this election how she comes out looking. And I'm not talking just physically looking, but in general, if she's on the stage against a 40-something who's bright and articulate and compelling, just the visceral reaction of the voters, I think, is going to be potentially overwhelmingly against her.
And we'll see. Also, Trump has massive experience in pop culture. I mean, he has humor behind him. He can make the crowd laugh, captivate attention. When he debates Hillary Clinton, he is going to steamroll her.
Well, I wonder, we talk about bias in the media a lot and being on the side of a certain candidate. John Harwood, obviously a Hillary Clinton supporter. Maybe you shouldn't have been a moderator. We'll talk about that in the next block. But in your case, I have to call out that you may be a little biased today, particularly, because Mr. Trump actually tweeted out and called you out by name. Do we have the tweet?
Oh, man.
Look at that. Thank you, Carl Higbee, former Navy SEAL, for your support of my plan to straighten out the VA. A mess. Great job at Kilmeade. So obviously that was on Fox and Friends this morning.
It was.
Right. Has the paparazzo been following you since?
Thank you, Mr. Trump. I've gotten a little bit of support here and there, but it's not about that. It's about getting him in office.
Right. What did you say exactly that got his attention?
I had a limited amount of time on Fox this morning, but I did say that, hey, look, the only thing that Trump wants to do, first and foremost, is fire people who are incompetent and fire people who are not doing their job. If you create a culture of accountability and hold their supervisors accountable, you will fix the system.
Okay, and he noticed and tweeted that out, and then obviously your Twitter blew up as well, right?
Yeah, I appreciate it very much. So
you know who followed me over the weekend?
Who?
Siri. The voice of Siri. That was one of the people that followed me. I said, who is this random person? I look at the bio real quick. You know me as the voice of Siri. So you had Trump. I got Siri. All right.
She knows more.
Right, exactly. Anyway, let's go to the prompter. Coming up next, is the RNC really in charge of the upcoming debates? This is the Daily Wrap, only on Newsmax TV.
The questions that have been asked so far in this debate illustrate why the American people don't trust the media. And you look at the questions. Donald Trump, are you a comic book villain? Ben Carson, can you do math? John Kasich, will you insult two people over here? Marco Rubio, why don't you resign? Jeb Bush, why have your numbers fallen? How about talking about the substantive issues people care about?
And welcome back. GOP presidential contenders moving now to wrestle control over the debate process from the Republican National Committee, and the networks hosting the events like the one you saw there with Ted Cruz. So this after the partisan train wreck we all witnessed on CNBC Wednesday night. Reports say the campaign will push the RNC to the sidelines, which until this point has been negotiating the terms of each debate with the networks. Going forward, the RNC will continue to be involved in debate operations, campaigns advisors say, such as media credentialing and ticket sales, but will not take the lead in what is seen as the slightly more important matter of negotiating the formats of the debates and moderators themselves. Ben Carson's campaigns manager, he sums it up thusly. They'll continue to do logistics and all that kind of stuff, but they're a partner. They're not our boss. That comes from Barry Bennett, Carson's campaign manager. The news comes as CNBC moderator John Harwood is unrepentant, despite being called in many circles, and we're including liberal ones here, and we're just paraphrasing, by the way, the most partisan and dishonest moderator in televised debate history. No matter, here's what the total self-aware Harwood had to say on the Twitter earlier today. Let's get it up, shall we? The CNBC debate was an ugly, raucous debate. We need more just like it. So, apparently, despite all the criticism in the world, he's still saying that, hey, what went wrong? All right, so do you think the next GOP debate will be fair, given all these parameters? Alice?
Fair? It'll be boring. It'll be wimpy. Listen, I understand, Joe, that complaining about the media echoes with a certain part of the base. Whining really works with those people.
Do you believe there's bias in the media?
But in the long run, I will say this, it is a mistake for politicians to complain about questions from the media. It makes you look weak, it makes you look like you can't be a president, and I promise you, whoever is elected is going to face a White House press corps that's going to ask some gotcha questions. Grow a pair, all of you.
Wow.
All of you.
Pair of ears
Toughen
he's talking
up.
about, by the way.
Has
Pair of
President
ears.
Obama had gotcha questions for his 8 years in office from this press?
Absolutely.
Maybe-
You ever
so
been in
maybe
the White
from-
House press room?
So just
Maybe from Ed
every
Henry.
single day.
Okay, so
Every
objectively,
day.
if you looked at a George W. Bush any press conference, is there a difference? Is there a tangible difference versus Barack Obama?
Those
so there's
people want
no
conflict.
difference from the White House press corps and how they treated
Listen.
George Bush and Barack Obama.
As someone who's covered politics for almost 30 years, I've never met a politician who didn't think he was being asked unfair questions. The challenge in public life is to learn how to handle them, turn it back, to win, to do what a couple of those guys did very effectively.
You know what was great about that debate, though, is single-handedly that brought the GOP together. We've been such a divided party for so long, but that was the one thing. I say, great, thank you, CNBC. Thank you very much, because it finally gave us all something to fight against as one, and it made my guy look like a presidential candidate.
That's what was impressive about Cruz's rant, because most debate zingers, they're practiced, right? With who was it, Benson with Quayle, right?
Absolutely.
John F. Kennedy is a friend of mine. He was so ready for Quayle to bring up the fact that he has more experience than JFK.
And
he was ready for it.
And Marcos hit on Bush was the same way.
Yeah, Marcos, exactly.
Newt
But with
Gingrich
Cruz,
last time.
he actually, and Cruz didn't say, you're treating me unfairly, you're treating us unfairly. And he rails off four things that were said during that debate, which you couldn't have possibly
And the crowd
practiced.
went wild.
And it went wild, right. But to Ellis's point, okay, during the nomination process, I think it does score you some points, and you see Cruz jumping in the polls, because that's what a lot of Republicans feel, that it's us against the world, and particularly the media. But in the general, I agree with you that if you start complaining then you're going to look weak. So now smart, maybe later not so smart.
Right.
It works with the base. No, I agree with you. There is clearly in the Republican base an audience for whining about the media. But I just think in the long run, it just doesn't help you, and they ought to avoid it.
Do you think there's a bias in the media, or you think it's an imagined up thing by conservatives?
Listen, there are some professions.
Oh, yes or no? Yes or no?
So I'm going to give you some context, because it's not so. There are some professions that tend to attract conservative people, right? Law enforcement, the clergy, the military. I would say the media is a profession where open-minded, free-thinking, more liberal
Left-leaning.
people would be drawn to. Yeah, it makes a little bit of sense, sure.
I've seen polls where something like 90% of those in the media that have been polled privately and anonymously say, yeah, I vote.
So we should have the Republican debate should be on the Excellence in Broadcasting Network, maybe the
Rush
Savage
Limbaugh.
Nation, maybe can handle one, GBTV,
but you know what,
and they wouldn't have to hear anything they disagreed with ever.
But if you want to talk about open-minded and fairness and free thinking, well, you would get savage attacks on many of these candidates from those very people. On
Michael
our
Savage
side.
attacks, or just Savage in terms of an adjective?
Savage and Savage Nation.
okay.
You would get deep-rooted policy questions, much more from a conservative
substantive
moderation.
ones. Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
But they would be fair.
They would be actually, I think, harder.
If
to
Harwood
answer.
says that it's not fair, if Savage said it would be fair.
I mean, some of these questions, fantasy football. Give me a break. Come on.
Handle it.
You wouldn't see questions
Tough.
like that from a.
But one thing
running
though
for
that
president.
I don't think that Cruz was whining. I think what Cruz was doing was he was actually trying to elevate himself in effect, because he was saying, look, I'm not like Jeb Bush, I'm not like Marco Rubio, I'm not like Trump, but I feel for all of these guys, and I'm going to stand up for every one of them and say what every single Republican or conservative who's watching this is thinking. And that's one of the reasons why Trump has been so successful, because he says kind of what you're thinking in the back of your mind, but you're a little uncomfortable saying.
And it's not about dealing with it. It's just about the fact of they want a chance to get their policies out. They don't want to be asked about fantasy football because it's a dumb question.
Right, and there was too much editorializing going on. Harwood could ask the questions that he did, but then don't compare the GOP frontrunners campaign to a comic book. Because then that dilutes the water completely, and then the next day all we're talking about is media bias instead of, I have no idea what anybody's stance is. You know, in terms of taxes, in terms of economy, everything that was supposed to be discussed, we're not talking about that. We're talking about John Harwood.
The reality television star is complaining about dumb questions.
But
I love it. I think it's great.
You can be adversarial.
He's trying to be a politician now.
It's great.
You can be adversarial without being vitriolic and angry and bitter.
Okay, we'll end it on that non-bitter note. Do you believe the next GOP debate will be fair? Feeling it might be a little bit more fair. We'll see. Go to newsmaxtv.com/comments. Voice your opinion. More Daily Wrap in just a moment. And welcome back. As you may have heard, director Quentin Tarantino set off controversy sirens across the country last week. This after marching with Black Lives Matter protesters here in New York City and making some highly controversial comments during a speech afterwards when he said this.
I am a human being with a conscience, and when I see murder, I cannot stand by, and I have to call the murdered, and I have to call the murderers the murderers.
Everybody follow that? Okay. Since then, several police unions across the country, including those in New York City, Los Angeles, and Philadelphia, have called for a national boycott of Tarantino's upcoming movie, The Hateful Eight. Hollywood superstar Jamie Foxx, no matter, came out to support Tarantino.
Quentin Tarantino, you are a boss. You're absolutely amazing. Keep speaking the truth and keep telling the truth, and don't worry about none of the haters.
Okay, Ellis.
What did he?
He said, "Don't worry about the haters."
No. The Tarantino code. He said, "Murderers, a murderer."
He's saying that he's supporting those that he feel were murdered by police officers.
Okay, and we to believe that there are no such people. I guess I'm just confused about it.
In terms of, you think cops are intentionally murdering?
I think that you can find cases. Listen, here's the reality of police. I mean, the vast majority of police do a wonderful job.
Let's preface, by the way, before you get into this, that you did co-write a book with Ray Kelly, who was a former New York City Police Commissioner for many years.
I'm very pro-cop, but I do believe in professional behavior by police officers. There are examples. I mean, that case in South Carolina where the guy shot in the back. I mean,
no one would disagree with you on that.
So I don't really.
The guy was shot in the back.
I mean, seems to me that's obvious. We should be against bad police behavior and for good police behavior.
Right, but that's obviously an outlier, that situation in South Carolina. Yeah. The Black Lives Movement was primarily started over what happened in Ferguson.
Right.
And that's when Michael Brown attacked a police officer, went for his gun, and then he got shot. And they're still pushing a narrative that says, hands up, don't shoot, as if Michael Brown was saying, please don't shoot me, and then was gunned down,
that was completely proven illegitimate.
Yeah, by a grand jury.
I mean, look at this guy. He part of this left-leaning pop culture that is slowly diminishing, thankfully, with the candidates we have in the race right now on the Republican side. But he is the epitome of, idiot. I mean, he's a complete idiot to go out there and stand like, hey, I'm going to stand with people who are advocating for the murder of cops. Are you kidding me?
It's not. Wait a second. I got to stop you there.
He is on their side.
It is untrue to suggest that the Black Lives Matter movement, which includes a diverse number of people who have a lot of different views, in the same way the Tea Party or some other community group does. But it is not correct to suggest that his organization, they believe that police officers are
How many Tea Party people have burnt towns to the ground in wake of their protests?
You're talking about Baltimore.
Listen. The point.
No. Answer the question.
There's no moral equivalence between the two sides.
It is a false narrative to suggest that the vast majority of people connected with that movement have murderous, horrible views like that.
The loudest majority of that movement.
In the same way that it would be unfair to say that about the Tea Party. Wouldn't you agree with that?
I completely think they're totally separate. No point ever has any Tea Party guy ever burnt anything during any protest.
There's some people at Tea Party rallies who said horrible things.
Black Lives Matter is on tape in Minneapolis. There's and this isn't just a couple of people. These are hundreds chanting pigs in a blanket, frying like bacon.
To be denounced in the same way that we would denounce those racists who showed up at Tea Party rallies, right? You join me in denouncing
the racists.
When has there been sorry, go ahead.
No, I mean, that point has been thrown out and trotted out a million times.
It's the
and
facts.
there is still, the facts have never been, it's never been shown
Cite one
that
time
the Tea Party has been overtaken by racists. I understand your point about the notion of, well, look, it's just as unfair to say that one bad egg, one bad apple ruins the whole batch. I understand that.
Right.
But to compare Black Lives Matter to the Tea Party in that comparison, I think is where you lose us.
Now, Tarantino plans to apologize, however. All of what we've just said, he is going to write an op-ed, apparently, apologizing for, calling cops murderers, basically. I find it interesting that he's willing to do that after meeting with Harvey Weinstein, who employs him, and the fact that he has a movie coming out very soon, and you really don't want to anger half the country, right? So is this apology based on the fact that, boy, I want to make sure
his own pocket?
Yeah, in other words, not based in principle.
What I have a feeling this is it's sort of like when Hillary says, I take responsibility for the emails, but she doesn't actually explain what she's taking responsibility for, where she screwed up, why it imperiled our national security. But couple quick things. One is, I'm glad that we have free speech in this country, and Quentin Tarantino can shoot his mouth off and express what he wants. And I'm glad we have a free market, which will punish people who say things that are offensive.
Right. And to that,
absolutely.
I want you to cite the one time, anytime, any Tea Party activist has ever cited.
I will find you a rash of people saying stupid, including racist
you can't name it now because it's never happened,
at Tea Party rallies, that people associated with the Tea Party doing things that you would find a tough time defending.
I don't think so.
I think.
I'll look for him.
Okay.
Best Tarantino movie, Pulp Fiction, Reservoir Dogs?
Pulp Fiction.
Both great.
Pulp, right? Pulp is
both great.
Easily the top, yeah.
Both great.
Okay. And that was 20 years ago, believe it or not, if you want to feel old right now. Okay, so how would you like to be featured on Newsmax TV? Go to newsmaxtv.com, talk back, record a 60-second video message that will be used on the air. Maybe. You can vent about anything. We'll answer your questions, who you're supporting for president. Go to newsmaxtv.com, talk back for more information. More Daily Wrap in just a moment. And welcome back. So how much do you think it would cost to build a gas station in Afghanistan? $200,000? Maybe $500,000? Try $43 million, and it came right out of your pocket. Well, not literally, but the symbolic kind of thing where you pay taxes and it goes towards something. Anyway, that's right. Special Inspector General for Afghanistan Reconstruction released this report that shows the Department of Defense Special Task Force designed to spur the Afghan economy was under investigation for criminal activity. Who would have thunk that? When the cost of the gas station was discovered. The Task Force for Stability and Business Operations, an $800 million program funded by the American taxpayer that ended in March, was behind the excessive spending. According to John Sopko, the Department of Defense, quote, asserts that it no longer has any knowledge of the task force. Interesting, just kind of disappeared. The DoD had budgeted $3 million for the station, but the overhead costs added another $38 million to the project. Actually, that would be, if we're doing the math right, it would be more like $40 million to the project. Anyway, the gas station isn't the first example of wasteful spending by the federal government in Afghanistan, or in general for that matter. More on that in a moment. Earlier this year, Sopko found the U.S. spent $335 million on a power plant no one uses. Ben Weingarten, not the first time, not the last, I'm sure, but $43 million for an Afghan gas station, and it doesn't even have a Quickie Mart inside. It's just a gas station.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if the Quickie Mart would be Sharia compliant there.
Oh,
first
very
off,
good
but-
point. I never
But
thought
but
about
also,
that.
I mean, we're living in a day and age where sequestration was considered the most draconian possible thing. How can the country survive? As we're going up to $20 trillion in debt by the end of this presidency, and you wonder, how do we get here? Now, $43 million actually pales in comparison to the entitlements, which are where the real spending is. But the fact of the matter is, I mean, our government is out of control, and basically I think you're going to have a reset at some point. Either the people will rise up and they'll say, we need to slash all of this unnecessary wasteful spending, or the bond market will react, and suddenly the U.S. government will be paying 5 or 10% on its treasuries, and then we'll have a real problem on our hands.
There actually was something like that. It was called the Tea Party. It was quite some time ago. But I love how...
I remember those rallies.
And the way the DOD probably got away with this, and this is the military in general, is they just rename it or give it a fancy acronym. The DOD Compressed Natural Gas Dispensary is what they called it.
It's a gas station.
So it literally is a four-pump...
Exxon.
It's a four-pump gas station. Right. But they make it sound on paper like it's this massive... And $43 million for a natural gas, dispensary, that's a reasonable number if you think about maybe it's a production facility or something. But no, it is a four-pump gas station.
Do we know if it's self-serve, or do you think they have somebody working there? I wouldn't work there.
I bet they have masseuses staffing the darn thing.
You think so?
Something dumb.
Wow. Speaking of masseuses, I want to get your thoughts in a moment. Give me an
Have
example.
you brought someone today?
What's that?
Some special guest you're going to introduce us to?
Well, no. Ben was looking it up during the break, and I think he found some interesting things that the federal government has also spent money on in the past that we may deem superfluous.
Yep.
Yeah. So one example, and this is from the Waste Book that I believe Senator Coburn used to put out, and it's put out by a senator every single year.
Oklahoma Republican.
Yeah, Oklahoma Republican. Right. So one line item, the National Institutes of Health spent $387,000 to give Swedish massages to rabbits with a mechanical machine.
Really?
It's money well spent, I would say.
Wow. Ellis always goes for the deep tissue.
That's at least as much as those women at Scores get for something like that.
Wow. We went down to Scores in this segment.
So
I don't know how we did that. It's closed, by the way. It no longer exists.
I don't know. I bow to your expertise on that subject,
jump in,
Mr.
Ellis.
Concha. Listen, clearly there's a huge amount of waste, right? And nobody does it better than the military-industrial complex. In fact, I've got some welfare queens who could learn something from those people in the Afghanistan military.
So as $800 for a hammer.
As a former military guy, then how do you fix it?
Well, the thing you need to do is you need to have accountable oversight. And when I was in Iraq and we were pulling the troops out, we were leaving millions, if not billions of dollars of equipment. We had Humvees as far as the eye could see that ISIS is now driving around.
Right, exactly.
I mean, these things that you see up there now, ISIS is driving those around and using them against the things that we put in place. And the only way to do that is to have an accountable administration.
But whenever we talk about budget cuts, and if you're a Republican, you can never bring up the military and cutting budget there because that means you're weak. And if you're weak, that means you don't support a strong military. You don't support a strong military, then you're not a Republican.
Right. And the reason the military has such a spending problem is if you're given $100 million every year, like a command is, you have to spend that $100 million. If you spend $89 million, well, guess what? The next year you only get $89 million. So there's no incentive to save money in the military. There's an incentive to actually spend up to that very limit. Ridiculous. It's unbelievable. It's so stupid.
The real problem is, and you can even go back to Reagan, when Reagan wanted to zero out certain agencies and he couldn't even touch it and he couldn't get through his own Congress. The problem is that we have baseline budgeting, which says basically that you start from wherever we were in the prior year, and a budget cut is when the rate of increase slows down. That's an absurdity. I mean, explain to the American people that you're going to have to take draconian cuts. You're going to spend, 50% less than you were planning on spending, which was already 100% more the next year.
Right.
It's absolutely absurd. And by the way, that's discretionary spending, which is still, again, the minority of the budget, not the majority.
Yep. Not the majority, right.
Yeah.
You start talking about cutting military bases, that means jobs, that means whole communities, and you just, where do you begin, where do you end, Ellis? I'm not quite sure, but we got to go. So anyway, what do you think of this latest example of government waste? Go to newsmaxtv.com/comments and let us know. That's newsmaxtv.com/comments. Coming up, we read some of your colorful and always unfiltered viewer comments. Stick around. Alrighty, it's time for your comments. First, we have a video comment, first on the show, from Jason in Phoenix, Arizona. And if you want to leave us a video message, once again, go to newsmaxtv.com/talkback. Okay, Jason has a comment about Donald Trump. Let's hear it.
Okay, you ask, do I think Donald Trump will win the Republican presidential nomination? Well, I most certainly hope not, because he can't win in the general, And we really need to nominate someone who can beat the Dragon Lady next fall, rather than someone who simply exploits the worst, most base emotions in a narrow segment of the electorate just to burnish his own egomaniacal aspirations. How does the GOP benefit from Donald Trump being in the race? In what way does it improve our chances of getting 270 electoral college votes, especially when we're already behind by 41? Can someone explain to me the math or path to a Trump victory?
Is he in a hospital bed?
I thought that was his kitchen.
Whatever.
Kind of bare covered, but it was very, very pensive. It was very meticulous, well thought out. I mean, that was genuine emotion that we had here, as opposed to email. I can't tell how people feel in email. Sometimes they do the, the exclamation points and the question marks, a lot of caps, right? That was somebody who genuinely cares about Republicans winning next year and thinks that Trump can't beat Hillary. So I pulled it up because I got a preview of the comment. Let's see. Latest CNN poll has Clinton by 5 over Trump. Fox News has Trump by 5 over Clinton. And then the PPP poll that came out on the 4th, that's the third most recent poll, has them at a tie.
Margin of error.
So, right, margin of error.
But then again, a month ago, Mr. Trump was way down in the polls to Hillary Clinton. He was down like 13 points.
When he announced he was down 26.
Yeah, so he is creeping up. Give it some more time.
That's true. Yeah. That's true. You would love to see, you say bring on anybody.
Right. Or maybe Carson. Run him. Maybe great.
You would, okay.
Carson lacks the political maturity to stay at this level and
He's not as mature as
Ben, who is Hillary Clinton's worst nightmare in a general election?
Well, I think it's probably Rubio just because of the contrast. And I'm not saying that in terms of substance. I'm saying that in terms of the style. And his whole message has been, I'm young, I'm fresh. There doesn't even need to be any substance behind it. He can basically just say that. And versus, stale, elderly.
I've seen this movie before, and it was Barack Obama versus John McCain, right? Young versus old.
It makes you wonder, doesn't it? All those complaints about Obama's youthfulness and his lack of experience and being a one-term senator. Did people really believe that when they were saying it?
Well, Obama was charismatic above all else. Like, he had zero message.
Yeah, but the complaint that he was too green, did people really believe that, or they were just saying it?
It was a talking point for the Republican. I believe it. I think Marco Rubio is too green.
Well, let me just say one thing, though. He's basically been able to pass his whole agenda, so I think he's been very effective with very little experience in the U.S. Senate.
Okay, so Rubio's answer. Anyway, viewers are still steamed about the debate. Lenny writes, regarding canceled NBC debate, Republicans can have NBC carry it, but put on their own moderators in place, like Sean Hannity, Mark Levin, Rush Limbaugh, Joe Concha. Okay, it doesn't say that. If NBC reneges, contact Newsmax. Wait, here we go. He actually does say this. Who have Joe Concha, Steve Malzberg, J.D. Hayworth to be moderators. Rick can watch it from home. LOL. You got to have Rick there for a little balance, right?
Ouch, Zing,
that poor guy gets beat over the head all the time.
Interesting.
That's the new thing. Nobody ever has to hear anything they disagree with. It'll be great.
To Ben's point,
Mark
or
Levin
maybe to your point,
someone.
I think that would be some particularly establishment Republicans. You don't want Mark Levin anywhere near you.
Are you for gotcha questions?
No, not for gotcha
questions.
I'm for not editorializing.
That is deep policy questions. Mark Levin will shred everyone on that stage.
Let it be known, I'm a media writer first, and I praised Anderson Cooper up and down for the way he handled Democratic debate. He asked tough questions without editorializing. And he did it standing up, by the way.
You made a career of gotcha questions, by the way.
Only with you. And they never work. It's amazing. Anyway, Kenneth emails, how about Newsmax conducting a GOP debate? There we go. Perhaps Rick Unger could be one of the moderators. Open-minded. That's good. I wouldn't have an issue with that. Perhaps along someone like J.D. Hayworth. Why not? What about me? Okay, let's move on. Regarding the VA needing improvement, Mary says, right on, Rick Unger, spelled wrong. We as a nation definitely owe our vets first priority. That's true. My late husband received excellent care at the VA facility near Medford, Oregon. But there are problems elsewhere. You hit the nail on the head. Our obligation must be met. Higbee, quickly.
I think the VA must reform really quickly. And I mean, you guys all saw Trump's policy that was released recently on the VA. It's going to reform it. Accountability.
Okay. We have a couple of comments on the it's all over the place, this number, $46 million gas station you, the American taxpayer, helped build in Afghanistan. Jim writes, how could anyone trust the federal government? I'm hardly shocked with the $40 million gas station. See, now it's down to 40. Yet we keep electing those crooks into office. And Janice says, I'm so sick of the wasteful spending by our government. And the crazy thing is, when someone is found guilty of misspending taxpayer money, they're never fired. That's true. Maybe Ellis can explain why so many government fat cats keep their jobs after fleecing the American people. We will talk about it after the break. If you don't mind, I got to read this. Remember, if you want to be part of the conversation, go to newsmax.com/talkback to leave a video message or email us at newsmax.com/comments. Yay or nay, that be next. Stick around. Well, hello there again. Thanks for coming back. You'll be glad you did as we present the best 6 minutes in broadcasting. It's time for Yay or Nay. First up, new Speaker of the House Paul Ryan may now be one of the most powerful men in Washington, but he'll still continue sleeping in his office on Capitol Hill. Ryan says sleeping at the office, quote, makes me more efficient. I could actually get more work done by sleeping on a cot in my office, and I'm gonna keep doing it. Note, the former vice presidential candidate could choose to sleep at the Speaker's office in the Capitol, which is considerably larger, but will stay in the decidedly smaller setting he's already used to instead. Yay or nay question, have you ever slept at the office before?
In the daytime, but not at night. But you're here every night, right?
Yes. You ever try to commute back to Jersey? It's
it's a nightmare.
Female dog, exactly. Carl.
Oh yeah, I've slept at the office.
You're a military guy, right?
Yeah, Iraq was my office. Yeah.
True. What was the craziest place you slept at? Like in the middle of the desert kind of thing, in a foxhole for like a couple of days?
Yeah, a couple of days. Watching the Chinese export our oil that we were guarding the supply lines for. That was fun.
The Chinese just jumped in there. Huh? I never heard that story before. Wow, that's a segment for another time. Ben?
Craziest place I ever slept, I have pulled all-nighters and then slept in the office, was in Robert Rubin, former Secretary of the Treasury's office at my old firm.
Do you have a couch at least?
Snap.
He had a pretty comfortable couch, I will say.
Blankets, pillows?
No blankets, no pillows. But
One up.
TV?
No TV.
Oh.
It's very.
What do you do the next day? How do you shower?
There's no showering.
There is no shower.
When we're working around the clock, there's no showering. You know.
Did you have any kind of like Arid Extra Dry on you or anything, a deodorant, something,
Clothing
just to kind of make the transition? You go to a store, you could go to a pharmacy or something.
Yeah, I ran across the street. Dwayne Reed, come back.
Good.
Italian shower.
We dig deep on the Daily Wrap. Anyway, it seems like drawing parallels to slavery is all the rage these days. And the sports world, well, it ain't no exception. Enter Steve Williams, the former caddy for Tiger Woods, who says in a new tell-all book that Tiger, quote, treated me like a slave. It should be noted that Williams, who you can see there, is as white as Wonder Bread. Made nearly $9 million over 12 years carrying Tiger Woods' bag until the two split in 2011 famously. Yay or nay question, with those kinds of earnings, could a better analogy have been drawn here, Ellis?
Absolutely. You should never make Nazi analogies and you should never make slavery analogies. Nothing is like either one of them.
That's and Holocaust. Stay away from
I
those.
put that
Nazi,
in the Nazi,
right.
That's
Yeah,
in the
good
Nazi
point.
umbrella.
For $9 million in 12 years, you can treat me however you want. And I will not complain.
Really?
Yeah, maybe not the 50 Shades of Grey stuff, but
Wow. Newsmax.com/comments. Let us know what you think, Ben.
I feel like there might have been something lost in translation because I'm pretty sure he's an Aussie. And maybe it doesn't have the same connotation. That's the only thing.
Slavery's not so bad over there.
Yeah. Well, it was a penal colony.
It was a
penal colony, so maybe it's like, it's just part of the culture.
Yeah. Good point. It's amazing you can earn $9 million for carrying somebody's golf bag and work in perfect weather. And anyway, we look back on the extraordinary life of Fred Dalton Thompson. You know him as a lawyer, senator, presidential candidate, and of course, actor.
If you want to turn yourselves into a greasy spot on a country road somewhere, go right ahead. I don't give a I don't think anybody else does, regardless what they say to your face. But you two monkeys are not going to do it on my racetrack.
Steals every scene. Thompson passed on Sunday from a recurrence of lymphoma, unfortunately. He was first diagnosed with cancer in 2004. Thompson came to prominence inside the Beltway when he served as minority counsel for the Senate Watergate hearings. Bet you didn't know that. The Republican was later elected to the Senate twice. He also starred in more than 20 films, including The Hunt for Red October. Many of you know him from his role as District Attorney Arthur Branch on NBC's Law & Order that you see there. Fred Thompson was 73 years old. You know, the comparisons always came with Thompson Ellis, that he was kind of like the next Reagan. An actor, strong figure, ran for president, it didn't work out, but still a likable guy, whether you're a Democrat, Republican, just a great figure.
Completely likable guy. My only question is, with the reverse mortgage, now that he's dead, what happens to the house? And
you're a horrible person. That's a whole bowl of wrong.
We're
doing
him.
an obit.
He would joke about that. He would joke about that.
Okay, yeah, all right.
Right,
Well, we'll give you that, I think. All right. Well, that's our horrible show for this evening. For Ellis Hennigan, who is going to hell, Carl Higbie, and Ben Wargarten, thanks for joining us tonight. Steve Malzberg, that's next.